So I've been hearing from a lot of folks in our community, even in private chats since we started, from lots of you asking if it's unusual to be in pain, even if I don't know of somebody. Is it okay for me to be hurting because I live in Boulder? I think there's a lot of people that are hurting. First and foremost, those closest. But I want you to know that if you feel like you are in trouble, that if you feel like you need some help, or someone you know might need that help, this is a good number to have in your phone. Whether you need it or not, you might encounter somebody else who does. So there's a text talk. You send the word talk to that number, or there's a phone number, and you can find them online. So we're going to start with care for ourselves. We're going to begin with making sure that we're doing okay. And for this Shabbat, usually, this is a time when people and rabbis talk a lot about Passover. Shabbat Hagadol is a special Shabbat right before Passover begins. And they would call it Gadol because it's great and it was important, and because their sermons were really long and they had to tell you how to keep kosher properly for Passover. I don't feel like I can really talk about Passover right now, but I want to talk about actually something of another designated Shabbat. There's another Shabbat that falls in the summer called Shabbat Nachamu. It's the Sabbath of consolation. Do you realize that there's a Shabbat whose entire theme is devoted only to God comforting survivors and mourners? It's the Shabbat that occurs immediately after the 9th day of the Hebrew month of Av, Tisha B'Av. And Tisha B'Av marks the destruction of the first and the second holy temples in Jerusalem, and it was devastating. It was devastating, and it was a major life quake for all of those folks in ancient Israel. And the Shabbat, immediately after, we read from the prophet Isaiah. In fact, for several weeks leading right up to Rosh Hashanah, after this day of marking calamity, we read from the prophet Isaiah all of these messages of comfort, of God providing the comfort. And so in this special Shabbat, Nachamu, it starts off in the Haftarah from the prophet Isaiah, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami, comfort, console my people. I've spent this entire week on the phone talking with congregants who have been hurting, talking to groups and sharing at their vigils. And I want to share a few things with you of, I guess, what I've seen and what I've learned. First is, like tonight, like we've been doing in different ways all week, we need to come together. Second, I think we need to remember the lives that are lost. I think a third piece is, I know we want answers to where there are none, and that's difficult. And the last piece is, to quote my daughter, we're done waiting. Last night at the Moms Demand Action Vigil in Boulder, I talked about a theme that we share a whole lot around here, that we need to show up for one another, that we can't hide. We can't hide from hurt or grief. I shared a teaching from Deuteronomy about not being indifferent, but I think the teaching is really, it's not about not being indifferent, although that's really important. It's about not hiding and not disappearing from our world. In that root letters, in those words for hiding, concealing, ignoring, is the same root letters for the word world, olam. We can't hide, no matter how much pain we might be feeling, or how confused we are about the world that we live in, or how angry we are. And I know that Americans don't do grief very well, and you've heard me say that a million times. I think we're here, like I said before when we were singing Shalom Aleichem, I think we're here to be angels for one another. I think we're here to accompany one another on each other's journeys. And I think that's holy work. So don't hide from yourself and your grief and your rage. Don't hide from God. Don't hide from your community. I think we're here not just to sing praises, but to take care of one another. Because Boulder has been traumatized, and I don't use that word lightly at all. Every conversation starts with someone who was in that store recently, 30 minutes before, 3 hours before, the day before, a little bit later, I was planning, but I got held up by a phone call. Every conversation is about a sharing of who we knew and how we were connected. Even the man who helped to install my garden, this garden bed, this raised garden, because my only tools are butter knives and duct tape. So I have this guy come in and do it. And he said he did the same thing for Officer Talley in his home. And he was a nice guy and treated him right. Some of you went to school, or your kids went to school with some of these victims, or you knew their parents. I had no idea that pretty much every Fairfield High School student who starts or ends their day somehow with that supermarket. And there were 10 souls who were taken from this world. It's nothing less than a tragedy, and it's wrong. It wasn't their time. It wasn't supposed to be this way. And so it's scary. And friends, it's okay to be scared, to be confronted by the randomness of violence in our midst. But I just got word, and I shared this last night, 2 things that I think we need to be mindful of when we're searching for answers. When we're searching for answers, we want to know why. And so there's a lot of blame that's going on to our Muslim neighbors, already being blamed for one man's heinous acts of violence. I've heard from friends in Florida and friends in Israel how the story is that there was an attack on the Jewish community in Boulder, and it's not safe for Jews to be in Boulder. Why? Because a Syrian man attacked this grocery store because he knew it was frequented by Jews doing their Passover shopping. It's out there. I hear that local mosques are not having their daily prayers because they're afraid of the threats that they're getting. Tracy Smith, a spokesperson for our neighbors at the Islamic Center of Boulder, talked last night at this vigil that I was sharing a bima with her, and she said that men afraid to go out, Muslim men afraid to go out because they could be identified by their beards, or the women by their headdress, the hijab. And so we know that Isaiah said, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. We have to bring comfort not just to one another, but to our friends who are also feeling vulnerable. The other thing I said last night and over the course of the week including to another group of clergy that I spoke to, is how we have to really strive to show up and not hide from ourselves, our neighbors, and our pain. But let's not put the blame not just on our Muslim neighbors, but because this is something that happens with mental illness. The murderer's brother said that the perpetrator had mental illness. It doesn't make it so. More importantly, the literature and the data that's out there show that mental illness does not correlate to mass murder, but we want an answer. We need an answer. Dr. Jonathan Metzl, director of the Center for Medicine, Health, and Society at Vanderbilt University, said there's no psychotic illness whose symptom is shooting other people. The National Director of Advocacy and Public Policy for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Angela Kimball, said that people are searching for explanations for behavior they don't understand. And it's easy to put a label like mental illness on behavior that frankly seems just beyond the pale. But if we continue to say this was due to mental illness, those with mental illness and mental health challenges will continue to hide and hurt in a silent sorrow. Nachamu, nachamu ami. Let's bring comfort to our people. For some of our younger folks, some of our kids who've grown up in environments where there are active shooter drills, they're saying, we've seen this. We know this can happen. And my daughter said, we're done waiting. It was so significant that she wrote a piece and it was printed in reformjudaism.org on their blog. I want to read her words. She'll kill me, so don't say that I told you so. She wrote, I'm done with people in power ending their action at thoughts and prayers. The thoughts and prayers that were sent a day ago, a year ago, and decades ago have not and will not save human life, nor protect me or my loved ones or more members of my community from being the next victim of this epidemic we call gun violence. We are done waiting. Enough was enough when the first innocent soul was lost to gun violence. Enough was enough when it became a heroic act to go to school every day with the uncertainty of returning home. Enough was enough long ago. She wrote, Boulder is forever changed. King Supers, a pillar of this community, is forever changed. The families of the 10 souls who lost their lives are forever changed. Witnesses and those who were here during this tragic incident are forever changed. The way we honor all those impacted is through action and empathy. The way we reassemble and mend the brokenness in our home is by showing up for one another and embracing the power of togetherness. Nachamu, nachamu ami, friends. God says that God wants to be a comfort and console my people, and we have to do that for one another, no matter what we're carrying. That's what we need. God, we know that's what we need. And I know you have sent us to do that for one another. We're trying. We're trying the best we can. We can do better. We will do better. Nachamu, nachamu ami. Let's bring some comfort to those that are sad and hurting and alienated and disenfranchised and lonely and struggling with how to make sense with all of this hurt. Nachamu, nachamu ami. Let's be together to bring comfort.
Nachamu, nachamu, ami yomar Elohechem. Nachamu, nachamu. Ami yomar Elohechem. Nachamu, nachamu. Ami yomar Elohechem. Nachamu, nachamu. Ami yomar Elohechem. Comfort us in our wilderness. Comfort us as we struggle to take care of one another. Comfort us in our wilderness. Comfort us as we struggle with this world. Nachamu, nachamu. Ami yomar Elohechem. Nachamu, nachamu. Ami yomar Elohechem.